Okay, we are back with fourth period now, and we have a student with a question. What is your name?
My name is Julia Gallagher, and I want to know what you think about the portrayal of mental health in the new Joker movie and how they made him into, like, kind of an abused kid that was beat up.
Okay, we have to do this without spoilers because I haven't seen it.
Okay, you haven't seen it yet?
No, but
Okay.
I've seen so many things like it.
Just the depiction of mental health issues in movies. The first thing I can go back to, if I can just avoid that movie for a second, there's a really interesting book called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and there was a movie that was made about that book starring Jack Nicholson, and it dealt with some of the issues that people faced and how society basically threw folks who were dealing with whatever issues away, or they shoved them into asylums and then treated them like animals. And so the book and the movie both explored the humanity that still exists inside folks, even though they've been institutionalized. And so, but I think that's it's a difficult conversation for people to have sometimes. I think, what do you do? I think there's still this weird shaming that goes on. Oh, that guy's crazy, and maybe you just say that in jest, but for someone who's suffering from any type of mental condition, I think we all have our own thing. Does that make sense? I think we all have our own psychoses that we deal with. Some just struggle with things more than others. And so I think that we need to be more cognizant of that fact in each other, and maybe be more supportive of one another when someone's facing some type of crisis. Some people have chemical imbalances and things that they need help with, or some people have conditional issues that have brought them to a particular way of thinking because of the way that they were raised, or incidents that happened specifically that might have driven them down a different path of thought or action. So, like I said, I think we all have our own thing. Everybody, mental health is for everyone, right? It's a concern for every single body, and especially the older I get, the more I think about that, because I think about things like, I've had family members that have faced dementia and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, and those are realities as well. There's different things that can cause people to have struggles with the way that they, cognitively interact with the world. So I think that just as a country, we need to do a better job. So, we can talk about the movie too, but I think that's part of what that's trying to explore, because in that particular movie, the Joker movie, and again, without trying to spoil anything, like, he's basically an outcast. And what struck me in that movie was that no one of significance in his life ever reached out to him and gave him a sense of stability or hope. And I think that's part of the driving message of the movie itself.
And it's also kind of incredible how things have changed. And with technology, people are feeling, even though we have this instant communication worldwide, people are now feeling even more isolated. And there's avenues for them to just stay in their rooms, and they don't feel like they really have anybody. We do know that human contact and face-to-face human contact is something we're designed for. And even that's changing. So this is not something that's set in stone all the time. It's also changing, the different mental illnesses that can arise from, different changes in society and technology.
I think about police officers and military folks who faced, live fire, and they come back, and there used to be this idea that, well, you just have to get over it. You need to man up, and because it was only men in combat, you have to man up and get over it and deal with whatever you're facing. If you can't, then you're just a weak person. And we realize today, especially post-Vietnam, that PTSD is a real thing, and that people are suffering and can't necessarily control some of the impulses or the rages that haunt them. And I think we're doing a better job. I don't know that everybody needs to be on medication, but I think sometimes the medications can be useful and helpful. But I think more therapy, real productive therapy, not just tell us how you feel, but let's explore what's driving impulses that are based on the feelings that you're having, and trying to help people, work their way through that and deal with it. I think we can be more productive and not shame people who are struggling in any way. Like, I think we've got this weird thing, and maybe that's been this way in this country for a longer time than I understand. But like, we focus on what is strong and what is strength, and everything that's not going to be up to a certain measure. We just go, well, then we just cast you away. That's sad, whether we do it because of mental health issues or because of someone's decision making that they've had in their lives that took them down a path that you weren't necessarily comfortable with, and their own preferences, let's say, or the way that we treat the elderly. Like, it's abysmal in this country how we just allow people to rot.
Yeah. And I think the focus of, like, we are pretty good and quick to try to treat symptoms like gun control or prison or suicide. We focus on the symptoms, but at the bottom, it is mental illness that, and if we could figure out a way to solve the root of the problem before it became the problem, that would be the ideal.
You think it's the word illness that throws people?
To put a stigma?
It's a condition.
Yeah, maybe so.
I have a condition.
Maybe we should just figure out a way to reframe it where it's not stigmatized.
That's kind of what I mean, the stigma of, and I think a lot of people would seek more help if we didn't have these giant stigmas around it.
And it probably should be available for everyone. This is kind of like the whole universal basic income.
Mm-hmm.
People said, well, like welfare or something like that. Well, that's food stamps. That's stigma. You're on that. But if you give everybody something, it's not stigma. It's not stigmatized. So, I think everybody could use a little.
Like public education?
Yeah, or in therapy, like you were saying. Like it's good for everybody. Mm-hmm. Obviously,
it's not charity at that point if everybody gets it.
Right, and it wouldn't be stigmatized. Yeah. But at the same time, maybe it's not as useful for everybody. I don't know. This is two history teachers, neither one of us having a doctorate degree or any certification.
Our musings on the topic. Just go back to the movie. Have you seen it though? Have you seen the movie? Yes, you have. I really am impressed with what they've done with that. I think it's you and I can have another conversation about it if you want to later, but it's really deep and insightful, and it pushes people to have conversations that maybe they hadn't had before. If you just take it at its base level, it's a movie, but there's so much more commentary in that if people really look for it. You can uncover it pretty easily, I think. Societal norms and who's valued and who's not, and all of those things. Like I said, systems of support that we should really offer to more people. Alrighty, here we have a new student with a new question.
Hi, my name is Mari Ford, and I was just wondering what you thought of people buying expensive clothes to appear poor rather than just getting their stuff from Goodwill.
Buying clothing that is trashed on purpose. It's expensive, but it looks like it's used. That's a weird thing that I've always been curious about status symbol things anyway, like why people go down and say, well, I need to look like this, or I have to dress like these fashion cliques that come about. I've always been interested in that, and I find myself struggling to not follow them because sometimes you're like, that's cool. I kind of like the way that looks, and so, but I don't know, the idea of it being
doing it for fashion or
doing
it for
what you mean me?
No, I'm talking about. Do you mean people buying clothes like this because it's fashionable or because they want to portray like they're poor?
Oh.
I think it's mostly because it's fashionable.
Oh yeah. Well, so that comes and goes.
Yeah.
So what?
Like the grunge look in the 90s, like everybody dressed down. In the 80s, it was all about. By the time you get into the late 80s, especially,
ripped jeans,
lots of ripped jeans and acid wash jean jackets and lots of neon this and that, and lots of smiling and happy things. That's kind of like late 80s. Lots and lots of intense day glow kind of colors and attitudes. And then you get into like the 90s, and they're like, well, actually,
early 90s is still the color was there.
You get like hair bands on the LA scene, and this big hair,
leather.
And all the dudes are in makeup and platform shoes, and they're basically stealing their sister's clothes and then going out on stage. And then but suddenly you get a change, and actually I'm going to count it around 1987 with a group called Guns N' Roses. They actually then turned that down a notch and came back to a more sort of a realistic look, although they had been sort of that, I don't want to say glam, but they kind of had a glam look at the beginning, these big hair bands. And then we get into the 90s specifically, and then you've got like Seattle, West Coast grunge feel to it, where they're like in flannel and it's everybody's in beanies. It's kind of a hipster move actually at that time. And so I don't think that was like a statement about, hey, look, I want to look poor. I think it was like our sound is more down to earth. We're against this glitz and glam. I think a lot of times in fashion, just as in music or movies or whatever trend might be popular, the idea that whatever is popular gets so popular that it gets sanitized in a weird way and it's no longer cool and interesting, and so people will then go in a very different direction and go, let's do this because now it looks like I'm going to set myself apart from those people. And so that's what's happening, perhaps.
Another great thing about being a history teacher is you get to see this come and go through high school students, because usually I don't know where high school students typically get their,
I don't know.
I don't know if it's college kids where it starts, but I think it's probably TV, right? And so everybody's kind of on the same page.
Online.
But yeah, so you go through, these
Like-
things that, like, I remember when bell-bottom jeans were coming back, and
They still kind of are. I've seen a lot of people in bell bottoms and then these wedge shoes, these wicker wedge shoes. Or
yeah.
whatever.
Well, about 10, 12 years ago, they came back for like 2 years, and then they disappeared again. And then and then bright colors, and then skinny jeans.
It's
they
weird.
come and go.
It used to go by decade, and now it's like it changes rapidly.
Changes. I think technology does a lot of that.
Yeah, maybe. What's this new visco thing? Right, everybody's got scrunchies, and yeah, that's kind of a. But that I remember that being a thing when I was in high school 30 years ago. Like, of course, there was also like they had. Everybody had like a perm. I had a
Big hair.
mullet. I remember the girl I dated, which is now my wife. She had like these giant bangs. Like that was just a thing. Like they look like almost like.
Will that ever come back? The
I don't know.
80s hair,
The
spray?
big hair of the 80s, yeah. Or they had these things that would crunch the hair and make it look crinkled. I don't know what that was actually called. Maybe it was a crinkler, like a crimper. There you go. It was crimped, so it was like chink 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 chink, and that. So that was different and interesting. And then, but yeah, it comes and goes. So now the scrunchies are back, and so that's kind of interesting. I don't know, like you talked about skinny jeans earlier. I wonder how long that's going to hang on before somebody goes, yeah, let's go the exact opposite
I
direction
just
with
know
that.
my wife about 2 years ago started tucking the front of her shirt in.
Yeah.
And I was like, did you just use the bathroom? What's going on? Did you forget to? And she goes, no, this is what I was like. She keeps up with all that. I don't.
Yeah.
And she goes, no, this is really good. High-waisted pants and doing this, it really can show your figure. Before, and I was just like, I quit listening a long time ago. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I've noticed that too because
The higher-waisted pants.
my
instead
wife
of
and
the
daughter
low.
pointed that out. They were like, these high-waisted jeans are coming back instead of like several years ago where it was like low-riding jeans.
The Britney Spears
Yeah.
era of the late 90s, early 2000s.
Well,
Yeah.
What about I see a lot of more girls than boys, but I don't see anybody in here who have like the ends of the legs are ripped and shredded looking. Like, is that a thing? Do you have it? Yeah. That's relatively newer. Was that from last? Did I see a little bit of that last year? Seems like maybe. But how did that start? Does anybody know? Like, how did that become a trend? Yeah. Yeah, like they're shredded up. Yeah, kind of.
When does it become uncomfortable to come to school in a fashion thing that was hot for a while? I just said hot, good Lord. That was,
It was
in
groovy.
style for a while,
Yeah.
and then it went away, but you still have those clothes. It's not like you can just turn over your whole, like what was the patterned things, leggings, is that still a thing?
Oh, like yoga pants and stuff? Yeah.
Like patterned, because, that was big here but then, you buy all these things, and then it's like people, I don't know who sets the trends, but people quit wearing them, and then you're like, okay, I can't wear.
Yeah. Okay.
these
So
anymore.
that was kind of my question. Okay. So with the things like who did you see first that you like? Hey, that's kind of cool, or did you just see them in the store and go, yeah, let's try that? Kind of both. Online, like Instagram is a big one for a lot of people. Okay. So
Can anyone think of one specific thing you saw and thought that is ridiculous, and then you ended up doing it?
I see people laughing. Yeah. So you said yes.
I would like to know.
Yeah,
Can you
come
yell
here.
it?
Yeah. Come up here.
I want to know what
What
you
do you-
thought was ridiculous at first, and
that-
then you started
Yeah. What was it? Do you
doing
know?
the.
Yeah.
whatever.
Will you share that? Yeah. Just curious.
It's okay. We've all made mistakes.
Because you've got yeah.
Okay, do I have to say my name?
Well, Sure,
I'm
sure,
just
Yeah. I
gonna
mean,
say-
you can, yeah. Go
Yeah, say
ahead.
your name.
Okay, Pearl Garcia.
All right.
Okay, it was the denim jackets.
Yeah.
And those are coming back with jean
Yeah.
pants. I'm like, but denim on denim.
Yeah.
Then
yeah.
I did it anyway.
But like I said, that's kind of an 85,
That's a
86,
85,
87 kind of thing. We
yeah,
had,
like,
but okay, so in the lighter colored jeans
yeah,
as
like
well,
lighter colored.
Yeah.
And
the rips and the what we called it acid wash. They look like they've been bleached too much, and like you accidentally poured stuff in the thing where you weren't supposed to, and then it came out that way. But that was kind of the fashion, So yeah, I think the same thing happens with hairstyles to a certain extent. But I think what I like about you guys in particular, young high school people, is that you go in so many directions with your fashion trends and your hair choices and things. That's kind of a neat thing. Like it's not like this. Like everybody looks this way. Like you all kind of got your own little pods of things going on, and then it may mix up every other day or so. I think that's kind of
Also,
a cool
I think
thing.
with social media, this generation, or specifically this generation and this time, their music is different. People listen to and music is all kind of wadded up. And like when I was a kid, you had your country kids that only listen, and then you had hip hop kids, and then you had rock kids. And now hip hop kind of just took over everything.
Yeah.
But they still, you still listen to, and I think that shows in their fashion.
You
as
guys are
well.
more eclectic, and I think that's pretty cool. And you're more open-minded about
Speaking
it.
of cool,
Yeah.
I want to come up with the list of top 100 slang words. But I know. But like the good, like, you know, the top. Just think about the top 5 ones that have like
Stood the test of
cool,
time. Yeah, cool.
being cool,
Dude.
and dude. Yeah, some come and
said-
go, but
What? Yeah, you got something? Yeet. Yeet is a new one. I'm kind of liking the yeet. Yeah, the yeet.
I don't know what that means.
No, it's like when you throw like yeet, you throw something. Like, yeah. Or triggered. That's a relatively new one. I don't know that one will last, but I've heard that one too. Yeet's the newest one, I think.
I want to bring back stoked from my
Stoked.
generation.
That's what.
I'm getting stoked, man.
That's yeah. That's kind of a
Like a fire. Stoked. That's like that comes from the skateboard thing, like rad. And
What's a new one besides yeet? Oof. I've heard a lot of people do oof. Yeah.
we
Yeah,
went, remember all
right.
the temperature ones? Like we went from
It's
like
hot.
Paris Hilton's hot to then lit, then fire, then whatever. It just went down this.
Yeah.
I don't know where they're at on that one now.
Yeah. If something's like exceptionally cool, do you have a word for that besides cool?
Groovy.
Something that is just the
Awesome?
best thing ever. Yeah. Oh, that's 80s. Totally awesome. That was a thing. That was just part of everybody's.
But
vernacular.
awesome's not really a slang word, right?
The way it's used, I think, though.
The way it's used, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it became that.
Epic. Oh, I hate that word.
Bro. I think there's people still say a lot of bro.
Oh, there's a lot of bros.
Sup, bro? Or is it bro or is it bruh? Bruh. Spell that. Is it BRUH? Yeah. Bruh.
I do
I hear a
of
lot
sucks.
when we visited Hawaii. There was a lot of bruh. Like that was men and women were using that. Oh, it's all right, bro. Yeah, you got one. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Lily Wyatt. What was the stupidest thing you did in high school?
See, they're trying to trap us.
Well, they're trying to trap you because I was a straight-laced kid that did nothing wrong. I actually was an exceptionally well-behaved student that all I cared about was sports, and I liked school. Maybe that's why I became a teacher. Now, on the other hand, I know you have maybe a checkered past, so yeah, you go ahead and
Checkered. Yeah, the mullet was actually cool at the time.
that's not a mistake.
That was, we look back on that and we go, that was weird, but it was the so many people did. It's like the ripped jeans thing. You look back and you go, maybe that wasn't as cool as I thought it was, or maybe it is. I don't know. I can see the pictures of me with the mullet and go, I mean, it fit at the time. You know what I mean? But
My
now,
hair was just like
but
this.
now-
This is what I
yeah.
wore.
no. So yeah,
I've never changed.
I had. How much do I want to admit on? No. No.
Hey, I want to know.
No, we're not talking about that one.
Abby, if you're listening, you
I-
might want to edit the
No.
following.
I had impulse control issues, and so that was maybe what led to some of the other weird things.
I'm glad you've solved that. I wish you would have seen the meeting we were just
No.
in, where he's over there white knuckling it, wanting
No.
to say something.
I've gotten better. Because I've gotten rid of most of my angst. I think the biggest thing that I regret, honestly, this is just 100%, just as straight as I can be on a recording. I drove way too fast. Like that was a thing that I really liked. I liked acceleration. And I tried to live my life in varying speeds of acceleration. Like I didn't really hit brakes much. I just was like, okay, I won't accelerate as much in this curve. That's kind of how I lived my life. And so that'll be my answer for today.
All right.
I'm not going to.
I'm Hayden Ringgold. My question's actually related to history,
Right.
so that's the first one.
Not our history, it's just history
Yeah.
in general. Okay.
Yeah. So what do you think was the most influential battle/war in history?
Hang on. Let me hold that thought for just a second. Let me go down a tangential path with Mr. Pumphrey here. Do you have relationships that you regret?
Oh, yes. I mean, that's
I mean,
why
you don't have to elaborate. I was just curious because it seems
oh,
like
goodness, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, just constant. Hundreds. No, not hundreds. Okay, it's not that bad.
Wow.
Sorry. Well, hey, that's why I could teach about it. I could give these young people some good advice and don't make the same mistakes I made.
You called me out for impulse control.
That's true. Well,
Hundreds.
not hundreds, but you know.
Is there one that stands out without naming names? Is there one that you were like, oh God, what did I? That was.
Well, I mean, I learned something from all of them, right? So no, I don't regret any of them. I wouldn't be the person I am today if. No, of course, yeah. There's a few I wish people I'd never met and stuff like that. But I mean, yeah. What are you gonna do?
What about not necessarily relationships, but what about just friendships? You're like, yeah, I shouldn't have hung out with that person.
I kind of steered clear of that somebody that would drag me down to a bad, I kind of got lucky. I on a farm.
So if you weren't influenced by other people, that means that you were the influencer. You were dragging other people down.
Oh, that's
paths.
definitely true. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but with all of that being said, I think that's true, that the things that you look back on, you reflect and go, wow. And you learn what not to do. You learn who you don't want to hang out with. You learn who you don't want to have a relationship with. You know what kind of life you do want to live. And so all of those things, I think, are part of the process. And, sometimes it goes more smoothly than other times.
Yeah, I think a valuable skill that if kids could just be confident being alone and, and not be dependent on other people, that they could just do their own thing and then let people gravitate towards them, that's healthier than constantly having to
seeking someone's approval, seeking someone's
lying. These relationships where people need to break up, and they need to break up. Everybody else does, but they just can't because they don't want to be alone on a Friday night or whatever.
I think it's weird that I have known people who will, pine after someone. My life would be perfect if I just had that person in my life. If I had that relationship, if I had that connection, if I had that whatever, whether it's a friendship or an actual, more serious relationship. But those people aren't going to make you happy. People are going to disappoint you. That's
even
the
a
way
marriage, you have to be happy on your own, and so do they, and then it just works together.
I've heard people say you have to go 50-50 in a marriage. That is only half the effort. You better be 100-100.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you better both be equally dedicated. That's a thing. And that's just not for marriage. That's just relationships in general. If you're not really in it, then what are you doing? I mean, I'm only going to give you half my effort and my time and my attention and my care and consideration. That's a weird thing to say if you really stop and think about it.
Okay. So. Well, by the way, we did have a question about most influential battles.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Tours?
Yeah, that's a big one. 732, the Battle of Tours, where Charles Martel and his ragtag Christian army fought against the Umayyad Islamic armies that were trying to take. They had already taken Spain, trying to take France and go farther. And if that didn't go off, I don't want to use the word miracle because I don't want to put that kind of connotation on it. But it was improbable that they won that battle, and yet they did. And I think more than likely their victory was more about the fact that the Islamic armies had come so far and had stretched themselves too thin and couldn't really do much more than they already had. That's kind of the extent of where they could go into. But yeah, that's a huge one.
To me, with battles, the further back you go, like you get a splinter, right? It seems like it could be more influential the further back in time because it would cause a splinter further back in time.
I think about the Battle of Thermopylae for the Greeks fighting against the Persians. Even though they lost that battle, they actually won the larger war because of it.
Marathon?
Marathon before that, but Thermopylae was bigger, I think.
Salamis.
Battle of Midway in World War II, the turning point where we actually stopped Japanese expansion, and maybe that had something to do with what I just said too. Maybe they had gone so far, being an island nation with limited resources, and they can only take it to that next extent. I mean, what if they had been able to take that island and then the rest of Hawaii? That's a whole different ballgame, though, perhaps. So I think that's a big one. Battle of the Bulge, if we continue on with World War II. The Battle of Somme in World War I.
Do you know what the largest military upset in history is? If you just go by numbers.
Gettysburg?
Pizarro conquering the Incan Empire. If you just go by numbers, how many Incas there were versus how many Spanish. It was like 100 Spanish versus 9 million.
They had about 400, but that's kind of tricky because they had converted people who had been loyal to the Inca onto their side. So they actually had more numbers than you think. But as far as like actual number of Spaniards versus the number of Incan warriors. Yeah, that's different.
And number 2 is Cortez.
It's a pretty big one. Yeah, I can't disagree with that though.
But once again, as far as like if Cortez didn't do it, somebody would have done it. It seems like. But yeah, tours just seems so huge to me. And the Thermopylae.
If I think about England, it would be 1066 when the Norman invasion happened. Battle of Hastings.
I forgot about the old Battle of Hastings.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we could do this all day.
There's a lot.
I have a book called The Top 100 Battles of All Time. It's in my. We can check it out. What they think. Okay.
Battle of Dien Bien Phu, when the Vietnamese overthrew the French and then convinced them to get out of Vietnam, and then we had to step in and try to quote unquote, save the day. So, yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. This is a question Jameen had.
Yes.
But I'm gonna ask it for her.
Okay.
What was y'all's ACT score?
Oh, yeah. Mine was dismal, abysmal. And here's, I gotta give you a little pretext on that. When I was in high school, the counselor came to me about midway through my junior year and said, "Hey, you need to show up this Saturday and take this test." And I was like, what is it? And they were like, "What's the thing called the ACT? You need to go take it." And I'm like, okay, why? He said, "Well, it's gonna be good for you." I said, okay. And I showed up on Saturday and I took the test. Well, I mean, it wasn't necessarily that quick, but it seemed that quick, I mean, you had to pay for it ahead of time and all that, whatever. But I didn't study for it. I didn't practice for it. I didn't know really the relevance of it in my life. And so I just went down there and took it. And I made a 19.
That's what I made.
Yeah.
See, this is where you can be one day.
See, well, but it didn't. I don't know that it had the same.
Well, the thing is,
Because it didn't. It was not this determining factor necessarily, like it might be for you guys.
It's still not really. All it really, I mean,
Yeah.
it determines where what schools you can get into, right?
Or what kind of money you can
But
get.
it doesn't. I mean, once you get into the school, then who cares about your
Right.
ACT score?
So if it's not this end all be all thing that I think sometimes people, I must make a 30, 100. I know that's not a thing.
I want to explain my case.
Yeah. And okay.
Well, get up here and
Yeah, come
explain
up
it.
to
You
the
got to
mic if
talk
you're
to the
gonna say
microphone. Scared to ask a question, but does want to justify.
Yeah. So you didn't say what your score was.
Oh, I actually don't remember my composite, but I did take intermediate intermediate algebra, because I think my math was so low.
Math was the
but
thing.
my
that
reading was like so high
Mm,
that I think my composite was mid-20s or
math floored me. I just
Something.
didn't know any formulas.
I got the study books for the ACT.
Mhm.
I never opened it because I didn't want to open it.
Mhm.
And then when I got here, I took it here at Lakeside, and then they didn't have a clock for a time test, so I
yeah.
had a panic attack.
Oh.
And I left 60% of it blank.
Yeah. Well.
So yeah,
so.
But I made
So
a
you
21
had
on the
a
math,
panic
so-
attack and just barely did anything. Franklin
Well-
put everything he had into it. Y'all made the
Yeah.
same.
Oh.
No, I mean, I was up to like 1:30 the morning before I took it. I mean, I really didn't take it seriously. I don't know. I mean, that's just, it wasn't, they did not emphasize the idea that I needed to take it and take it well. I just was like, okay, cool. I went and did the thing.
And I hate that we have it. That
Yeah.
that we hang so much on this one test.
Yeah,
For
and
the
I mean, it's
future.
not, I don't feel that I'm an unintelligent person, and I'm not embarrassed to tell people I made a 19 on that test. I mean, I've worked hard to be smarter, every step of my life. So, and I think that sometimes we look at people and go, oh my gosh, well, you only made this, or I look at, I mean, it becomes a status symbol. We were talking about status symbols a while ago. Look at this, look at what I did, and look what you did, and look how much greater I am than you. That does not equate the same thing, actually. It just means that you may be good at taking that particular brand of test. So, I mean,
And I wasn't
take it for what it is.
interested. I was a meathead in
Yeah.
high school, and all I cared about was sports. I wasn't interested in history, math, nothing. I didn't want to learn anything but sports. And a lot of people are going to be like that. It's sad that you guys make all these decisions at this age, because some of you are going to be such different people in 10 years. But it is what it is. So you got to
Yeah.
play the game.
Take the path that you feel that you need to, but be open to change if it presents itself.
Yeah.
And you think, well, that's better. I mean, that's why I teach, because this is better than what I was doing before. And I
love
thought
that.
that was pretty good considering what I had done before that. So just be open and flexible. I think that's the key to being successful ultimately.
And keep your debt low so you have those choices.
And trying to keep that
Just once
debt low.
again, debt low so you can have
Mhm.
choices. All right. Next question. Anybody?
Like, do you think it's right for like teachers to have favorites in their like classrooms? Like have favorites in there.
Like teacher
and
pet kind of thing.
I think it can naturally happen, but I don't think it's right if a teacher uses that
Like have you
grade-wise
faced
or
this? Don't call names, but
I'm
like,
not gonna. No,
give me
I'm
a
not gonna say
generalized
names.
scenario. Like what do you mean?
Okay, here's an example.
Okay.
Like they put. Yeah, I know. They're gonna have to put like in grades Friday at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
And you're the only student in there that she didn't put in a grade for this project.
Okay.
And you have to email the teacher.
Okay.
And it wasn't like a rude email, but the teacher took it as a rude email. And so then
this is kind of the opposite of being a favorite, though. This is like
and it's
singling
like,
someone out because it
was rude in an email.
Oh, see,
But
but don't say anything else. I get what you're saying. We work really hard to try to be as even-handed as we can be, regardless of, I mean, everybody has their own particular biases, and what I appreciate are students who are willing to try. The students who irritate me, honestly, are the ones who just seemingly couldn't care less. And then I've got to try to figure out a way to reach those. And then, so the irritation becomes kind of a quest of mine. Like, how do I reach out to you to try to convert you over as best I can to actually try to use this to better yourself? And so that's the only reference that I have. I feel that when I was in school that there were teachers who purposefully and exactly treated students differently because they either just didn't like them as a person, and you can see that reflected in the way class ran or the way they associated with them. That's completely unfair, and I want to be as fair as I can to everybody. And fairness means I treat you, like I react to the person that you are and try to help you along your way because that's my job.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
so,
like it is their job. Like they assign it, we do the work. Her job's.
I know.
His
So,
or her job
but
is to
but
put
to
in
answer the
grade.
question, like I don't like that idea that there are favorites and there are none. Everybody should be my favorite. I just have to figure out what you need as a student and then try to help you along your way.
Yeah, it's like my grade shouldn't suffer because you don't. Like
Right. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
like,
I can appreciate that.
Yeah. I think it's natural for a teacher. I mean, most teachers are human. I'm not. I'm half robot. But most teachers, gravitate towards certain kids, but it shouldn't reflect on the evaluation and the actual job performance.
Yep. Okay.
All right.
Very good.
That
Thank you,
is
guys.
fourth period.
Thank you all.